Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of Enforce technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tenkatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by Enforce technology. Only from Tenkata Protective Fabrics.
Good evening, everybody. This is Ronnie K in New York, and we got, as you can see, we got a special guest star tonight. We'll get to him in a moment, but there's my pal Tommy. Tommy, how you doing, buddy?
Good, brother. How are you?
Well, good. We haven't really seen much of summer yet here. It's the middle of May. It was like, I don't know, 9 degrees on Mother's Day, and it was raining. I mean, we haven't had a warm Mother's Day here in like a couple of years. The weather, the whole weather thing's changing, man. So what can I tell you? But other than that,
I just wanted to squeeze in. I know Eriks is dying to talk to us, but you want to give a brief recap on the Memorial Weekend? I mean, it was big.
It was kind of epic. So you know what? Let's do this. Why don't we introduce our guest and give him the opportunity, because he was a participant, and give him the opportunity as well to talk about the Memorial Weekend as well. So our special guest star tonight is the superintendent of National Fire Academy. He's a 49-year veteran of the fire service, started as a volunteer in New Jersey, worked in the fire marshal's office for a while in Howell Township. And then in '89, he packed up his bags and he moved west. He went out to Oregon, Tualatin County, I believe it's called, fire rescue, and then worked in Dallas, Oregon. I didn't know there was a Dallas, Oregon. I thought there was only one Dallas in Texas, but what do I know? And then he went to work for the state. He left when he left Oregon a couple of years back. He was the director of public safety standards and training, and worked under 3 governors. Has a long history. Has a brother who was a retired fire service guy out of New Jersey as well. I know his brother Maris pretty well back in the day. And in November 2020, he took the post as the superintendent National Fire Academy. So with that, Eriks Gibliks, welcome to the Backstep. Great to have you. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Good to be with you both. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So before we get to the stuff we want to talk about with you, let's chat a little bit about the Memorial Weekend. It was epic this year, needless to say. We had the most amount of family members we ever had. We had 1,200 family members. We put 266 names up on the wall, and the rain. Then the rains came, and so we, for those of you who didn't see it or haven't been there or haven't watched, we couldn't stay on the campus because it's all outdoors. So the good graces of the people of Mount St. Mary's University, a quarter mile down Route 15, gave us their sports arena, and our work teams, God bless them, we had 30 or 35, I think it's 35 of them, and they picked up that whole campus and put it in trucks 2 or 3 times and moved it back and forth. And next to the arena, I'll just give you an example. Next to the arena itself, there's one of those, looks like a tennis bubble, but they call it the field house. And there's tennis courts in there. There are baskets for basketball, and then they put that to the side. They could play softball, and it's big enough for a field. And our guys Saturday night, while the people while the families were having their candlelight service in the arena, our guys moved 120 tables with chairs to match and set up a dining room for the next day, so the families could have lunch after the service. So that's the kind of stuff they did, and they did it all weekend. So they really, it was epic. It was a little tight, I'd say. It wasn't super tight, but a little bit tight in the arena itself. But we walked by each other. I had the privilege of accepting flags for some of our FDNY families. Eriks, you spoke up in the beginning and talked about the bells.
Correct. The importance of the bell, the 555, honoring our fallen.
The importance of the bells and the history of that. And, of course, Tommy was finishing up his time in the command center as the chief of operations, and also came to accept flags. I think, Tommy, what'd you get, about 4 or 5 of them?
5. And what an honor to be able to do that.
I know. It really was an honor I tell you, walking up there, this is one of those things that looks easy on television. You know, But walking up there to accept that flag on that big stage, not that you're on the stage, but just the enormity of it at the moment kind of struck me, and the chief, my first flag was given to me by Keith Bryant. He was the first presented to me. I went up the second time, it was Joanne Rund. And then when I went to the left, it was Frank Lieb from New York City. So it was just, but I picked up 4 or 5 myself. And what an honor to pick up that flag on behalf of that family who couldn't make it. That's why we do that. We have a whole kind of a cache of people who go up and accept the flags on behalf of those families who don't make it. So we asked, just as a side note, Eriks, I don't know if you heard this, but on Sunday afternoon, we went back to command at the campus, and we asked Joe Savak, our transportation guy, Joe, how'd you do this weekend? He said, I think I moved 10,000 people. I mean, that's epic, man. We had 22 buses, and we moved all those people how many times back and forth between Gettysburg, the campus to Mount St. Mary, back and forth. So, and then back to the airport after that. So
yeah, it was. Yeah, you're spot on, Ron. And I would add a few things to give people a idea of the backdrop, if you will. So you mentioned 1,200 family members, right? And thousands of other guests that came along with them, right, to honor our fallen. We made the decision, the foundation did, to move it indoors, the right decision. Because of the weather, nobody wants family members and especially killed kids and our older participants be sitting out in the rain and the wind for 3 hours in the evening for the candlelight or for the morning service. But, some other things to give people a backdrop. One is that, the family members all did get a chance to visit the campus and to see the memorial. So the foundation did a great job moving people in and out with the charter buses. The other thing that happened behind the scenes, you mentioned the flags, but a lot of people may not realize that each of those flags actually flew over the United States Capitol and was presented to Victor Stagnaro, the executive director of the foundation, and Dr. Lori Marmero, the U.S. Fire Administrator, at a ceremony at the Capitol. So then they all were transferred up to the campus, neatly folded and presented to each family. So the Congress wants to make sure that the federal government also recognizes the importance of these sacrifices of these brave men and women and also their families, right? So that's why we do it. So we never forget, we make that commitment. But then the other thing I'll add, and I know it's not on your wall yet, but this is somewhat a little bit about you, and I know it makes you uncomfortable, but this was a special year for you. Because you were one of the hundreds of volunteers behind the scene that just come to Emmitsburg each year, as does Tom, to support the event, to make sure that the family's experience is second to none. And this year was your final year as the incident commander. So I know the foundation did recognize your service. And I think personally and professionally, and for all of your listeners, I thank you for your service and congratulate you. And I hope the next time we have the show that you've got that plaque proudly displayed there behind you.
I can go get it. It's over there. You want to see it?
Well, show people. It's great.
I wasn't going to do this, but I'll do it.
All right. And that's why I brought it up, right? Because I think it's important that people know that what you and Tom do and countless other volunteers each year.
Yes. So thank you for mentioning that. This is when they opened this up and handed it to me, boy, they shot me in the heart. I got to tell you, because it's this was something very near and dear to me. And I thank you for your kind words, Eric. I really do. But you come the first year, like they say, it's like getting hooked up with the mob. You try to leave and they drag you back in, So 1998, I came down just to be a worker bee, and I never looked back. I just got to keep coming every year. Tommy, same thing. Tommy came to Washington in 2002. And never look back. It's just one of them things that grabs you in the heart. Yeah. And you say, I gotta do this. It's something I gotta do. And 25 Memorial Weekends.
Yeah, and for your listeners, right, things that happen behind the scenes that people don't know, right? Obviously, there's an incident management team that coordinates this weeks, months in advance of the program starting. And I know, at the end of each memorial, you do a hot wash, your incident management team, on what needs to be done for next year. But, you have over, 400 members of the pipes and drums. You have honor guard members. You have family escorts. You have people, moving people, right? Hotels, lodging, support services, even people that need wheelchairs. So it takes hundreds of people behind the scenes to support that event. And your leadership obviously played a key role in that for many years. So thank you. And for anybody interested, I'll just make a plug for the foundation, but take a look at National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. And they're always looking for people that want to come and help support it. And that includes, and you mentioned the food service, but a lot of your listeners, come from around the country to serve the meals to the family members, right? The lunch, the dinner, and that's something that just happens. But it takes members of the fire service, our spouses, significant others, that come and help make that possible.
Yeah, we sat back a few years ago. We said, well, you know what? We got 25 operating units that have to work in harmony. And then we started writing SOPs. So we actually have a book of SOPs. So we said, well, we'll do that in case we get vaporized by a Martian ship. And the book will be sitting on Ron Sarnicki's shelf, and the next group can come in and pull it off. So we're now up to 28 SOPs, and it just helps the weekend move. And what a team. I got to say, what a team, and what an experience it was for me working with these people side by side. It was fabulous.
I'm looking forward to see what the future is going to look like on that. I know Ron was pretty instrumental a couple of years ago when we started talking about succession planning. And we tried to go at least one deep. And that's where the folks that are at the helm right now, John Hart, former Baltimore County Battalion Chief, Gary Kirschbaum, former PG County, all those guys are going to do a phenomenal job and hopefully take it up to the next level.
Yeah, and that was kind of part of my decision. It's like, well, 25 years, 7 is the IC, 13 is the ops chief. You have to know when to say when, and that's kind of what I wrote in a recent blog on LinkedIn. Knowing when to say when, and I stepped aside, and Gary, who's a full-time employee of the foundation now as the managing director, he's also going to be the incident commander for the weekend. So they will do great things because it's fresh perspective. And that's what you want. It's that fresh perspective, that new outlook, so to speak. So, we wish them all the best. And I said to Gary when I turned over the reins, you weren't there for that, Eric. I had this big 3-ring binder that I used every year because I'm an old guy. I use binders, right? So I said, I want to hand you the memorial books.
Yeah.
So we turned over the memorial book. So that was that. But they'll do fine. That'll perpetuate and they'll go back next year and we do it all. Unfortunately, we have to do it all again.
Yeah, Ron, the other thing I think it's worth noting, this year there was also a very sad milestone that was reached, and obviously your roots to the FDNY, you see this on a daily basis, but this year we surpassed the number of responders to the World Trade Center. Everybody remembers 343, but we surpassed that number now of World Trade Center responders who have died from illness and injury from the World Trade Center, right? So those fellow firefighters are honored on a section of that memorial together as a group as they responded. But sadly, more than 343 now have died from their response from illness and injury there. So I know a lot of people remember that 343 on 9/11, but we're sadly at a place now where more than 343 people have died after that event from illness and injury. So I just want to share that because that's a milestone and a sad milestone.
And we have a brass nameplate wall in headquarters on the first floor, and they had a duplicate. It's very old. It started years back where they put the line of duties up there, and they put up another whole new. I don't know how they duplicated the old one because it was made back in the day, and it's on a different wall in the lobby of headquarters, and they're tacking on those names every year, and unfortunately, it never stops. It's like it doesn't seem to end. So. Thanks for bringing that up. We appreciate that. And again, take a look if you've never been involved or never seen the fall. It's firehero.org is the website, and there's a ton of resources. There's training resources. There's free stuff on there. Go take a look. So we want to get to the superintendent and ask him a couple of pointed questions about the fire administration, about the NFA, what's going on, and some of the programs and some of the things that they've been doing. So I'll start it off and ask you, like the Fallen Firefighters and the U.S. Fire Administrators Summit that took place, and what's that all about, and why should we be interested in that, if you will?
Yeah, great question, Ron. And Dr. Lori Moore-Merrill, the U.S. Fire Administrator, came in, obviously no stranger to the fire service. She started as a firefighter paramedic many years ago in Memphis, and then she went to work for the IAFF, active there in a lot of different projects, including 1710, 1720. And then when she left IFF, was involved in a corporation that looked at fire service data. So when Dr. Lori became the administrator, one of the things she wanted to do was to bring together our national organizations under something called Fire Service One Voice. Because one of the things that she realized is that oftentimes our message gets lost in Congress from the different organizations that visit Capitol Hill. So one organization may say A, another one may say B, another one may C, and they're all important. But what she said, look, our message gets diluted and gets conflicting at times. So how do we get together? So she brought together the national organizations, International Fire Chiefs, NFPA, International Association of Firefighters, National Volunteer Fire Council, training directors, you name it, that alphabet soup. And what she said to this group is, look, let's have a summit and let's agree on what the issues are of concern to the National Fire Service. Doesn't matter if you're a career volunteer, what are the issues? So we've held 2 summits so far. They're held in October. The third one is being planned for this October. It's a public event, so everybody's able to attend. If you can't make it, we live stream it. But that summit in the first 2 years identified 5 issues. One of those is cancer. I know you've talked about in the show, the importance of cancer in the fire service. The second one is behavioral health. Sadly, what we're seeing is more firefighters dying of suicide than are dying in the line of duty. So how do we create more awareness, more resources for that? The third one is recruitment and retention. The fourth one is changes to our fire and EMS response based on weather. We're seeing parts of the country now that are getting water and rain that have never gotten it before. We're seeing fire departments buying high tire vehicles to go rescue residents that are trapped. We're seeing extreme heat in certain communities. Look at Portland, Oregon, over 2 weeks of over 100-degree temperatures a while ago where 100 people died from not having air conditioning, right? So those are those extreme heat. But also, if you look at the wildfire posture, we no longer have wildfire seasons in the U.S. We have a year-round wildfire footprint in the country. So we just had wildfires a few weeks ago in West Virginia, Louisiana, Texas, and we're having wildfires where they've never had them before. So it's not just the Western states issue. It's not just the Pine Barrens issue in New Jersey. It's really a national issue. So the next one won't surprise anybody, codes and standards. We have a number of communities that haven't adopted the most recent fire code or even the one before that. And some communities are discussing rolling back current fire codes that are very effective under the guise of affordable housing. So we're seeing people have discussions that if we just roll back these fire codes, if we take out the sprinkler requirements, we could have affordable housing. But what we know is from America Burning 50 years ago, right? It's the 50th anniversary of that document. We still have a fire problem in this country. We're still seeing more than 3,000 civilian deaths, and a lot of those are underrepresented populations that don't have a working smoke alarm, may live in housing that doesn't meet the fire code. So that codes and standards discussion is active. The next one and the last one is our equity with our law enforcement partners from a funding standpoint. Congressional Fire Service Institute is leading that one out of the 6. But if you look at how many dollars are made available to our law enforcement partners versus what the fire service gets, and it's not a knock on Assistance to Firefighters grant, that program does a great job, but that's the only grants really available for our career volunteer firefighters for equipment and for staffing. And as we know from the grants coming in, there's not enough money there. What we also know from the funding standpoint, we're approaching $1 million mark now for our fire engine. We're approaching 1.6 million for ladder trucks. So, the hoagie sales and the bake sales for the volunteer companies aren't going to make it there anymore. So those grant funds are more important. So again, raising, I think, the awareness at the local, state, and federal level of the funding needs of the fire service, which are just as important to law enforcement. So those are the first ones that came out of the bucket for the first 2 years. Then this year we added, cardiac specifically as a special group because of the importance of the heart to the firefighters. The other one is data. And then the other one is the emerging issues, right? So lithium ion batteries, which we see on a daily basis causing fires, right? The electric vehicles, all these new technologies coming out that we encounter when there's something wrong with them. The discussion there is not only awareness of emergency technologies, but how do we bring the first responders into the discussions with the manufacturers when they're starting to design these things so we could talk about the safety elements and what happens when it catches on fire. So those are all active out of the summit, and your listeners can access that simply by Googling U.S. Fire Administrator Summit, and all the documents, all the reports are there. And it's a pretty exciting time because all of our partners across the globe shared this discussion at the World Fire Congress last week. And these issues to the U.S. are not limited to the United States. That's why I mentioned around the globe. These are issues affecting the fire service around the world.
I'm sure. I mean, you just look at the battery issue. That we're not the only ones that are using electric bikes. They're using them all over Europe. They're everywhere. For us in New York City, it's the third leading cause of fire deaths last year in New York City. So that's a number that's creeping up. That's like crazy stuff. But I read some of the stuff on the summit and it looks good. And I think what you said has merit in terms of what the word that gets to Washington, because everybody has their own agenda. I mean, at the end of the day, the IEFF has theirs, the Volunteer Fire Council has theirs, and everybody else, all the alphabet soup organizations. So it's good to bring everybody together with one voice. It's a really terrific idea.
Yeah, and it's not to stifle those groups, right? So those groups still can have their own items, but at least let's agree in unison. What are the ones that we agree on? And let's work those as a collective.
Yeah, we tried that in New Jersey a couple of times when I was active over there, and they started like their own mini whatever you call it, fire service caucus or whatever, and it was the same thing. Let's at least agree on a couple of things. We did it in Connecticut. We agreed on a couple. The career guys met with the volunteers, and we said, okay, what's important here? Safety, same things: cancer, safety, heart attack, equipment, grants, all that stuff. So we did have some common ground. No matter what, there's going to be some common ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom,
I've heard there's a group from the summit that's starting to address and look at some recruitment and retention issues. What is that group doing, and basically who's in that group?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Great question. So out of each of those items I just mentioned from the summit, there is a work group tasked with addressing the issues that have come up in the discussion. So recruitment and retention has more than 36 members from career, volunteer, combination, fire, and EMS agencies. And we include EMS because it's not just a fire issue. It's not just a fire-based issue, but EMS is also part of the discussions, truly from coast to coast. So it includes people from California as well as New York State. So we actively meet with those members. Mary Camelli, the fire chief of Mesa, Arizona, is the co-chair with me. And so far what we've done are 3 things, and then we are working on a 4th. So the 3 things that have been targeted out of that report, one is the International Association of Firefighters is working with the U.S. Department of Labor on an apprenticeship model for firefighter, EMT, paramedics. So working just as we do with our apprenticeship programs, right, within our trades to bring people in, and at the end, when they're successful, to have a job ready for them. So there are already some pilot projects. California has a very successful program that's been in existence for a number of years under CalJack. Oregon, Washington are just starting. But even New Hampshire is starting with a program in their state where they bring in people interested in being a firefighter EMT, firefighter paramedic, providing them the training to be able to be licensed, and then they have a job. So IFF is working with labor on that one. The second piece, National Volunteer Fire Council, working with Department of Education on something called CTE, Comprehensive Technical Education. So getting programs into high schools, into community colleges for youth that are interested in being in the fire service. That could be as a volunteer firefighter, a firefighter EMT as a career opportunity, but getting them thinking about what's there. Growing up, we had the VOTEC programs. Those have come and gone, but it really ties into that discussion there, which is, let's give these opportunities in our high schools for kids to come in and learn what it takes to be firefighters. There are a number of communities across the country that are doing this very well. We have individuals that want to serve. They just don't know how to do it, right? People think, well, in my community, they're all paid firefighters, but in honest, they may have a volunteer fire department. They don't even know about it. So giving folks that opportunity in that high school, community college age bracket to think about what they may be able to do. So, those skills, as all of us know in this call, carry into other things too. So if my community doesn't have a career fire department, I still have a place to serve as a volunteer, but I'm also getting skill sets that can give me other opportunities. So, the sky is endless as far as what we do, but it's working with the Department of Education to get that rolling. The third one coming out is the need for us to identify best practices. So one of the things that we hear quite often on the conference circuit is, well, nobody wants to be in the fire service. We just can't find people. But in all honesty, we have programs that are working really well and are finding people. In some cases, we're growing our own. In other cases, we have creative programs to find people. But, we've identified more than 40 best practices across the country that people can look at it and basically say, hey, look, let me call this fire department and find out more about this. So we're trying to connect people with needs with those that are doing well. Now, it may not work in every town, but at least it's better than just throwing up your hands saying nobody wants to be in the fire service, right? And I would say underneath that discussion on best practices is not everybody that we're looking for needs to be a firefighter or an EMT paramedic, right? We have people that have a passion for community risk reduction, a passion for prevention, a passion for investigations. We may have somebody that's a computer person that doesn't want to fight a fire, but might be glad to set up the IT system for their volunteer fire department to take care of it. So I like to say there's 1,000 jobs for 1,000 people. And our newest task this year coming out of the summit is the need for a national campaign to let communities know what the fire service does. Very similar to what the military does. And not that we're recruiting soldiers, but we are recruiting and looking for community caretakers that respond to our emergencies. A lot of people don't know that we need help. A lot of people don't know what we do. So how do we create a national campaign to bring awareness to the fact that we need people in both career and volunteer roles serving our community? So that's the one we're currently working on with the work group.
And, we talked about that a lot in the past about we don't market ourselves good enough. We never did.
No,
we never did. We're lousy at marketing, so maybe it's something that's time that whose time has come. You're talking about the apprentice program. We have a cadet program in New York City now. It's first time ever. And it's almost a year. They came in last June. We have 100 cadets and they go to all the bureaus and they rotate every 15 weeks. I get 10 of them. And I have them for 15 weeks in the Bureau of Fire Prevention, and then they rotate out to the next thing. And aside from whatever they're doing, they have days that they go to the Fire Academy, they go to the Rock, and they have Rock days. And in fact, this week, the city recently, let me step back. A while ago, our EMTs and paramedics were able to take a test instead of the overall competitive exam for firefighter. They took a promotion exam to firefighter in-house. So it gave them the advantage because they're already in the fire department. Well, recently the city opened that same test up to fire inspectors, my people who work with me, the dispatchers and the cadets. So they're all taking promotion to firefighter from whatever title they're in. And so it's kind of more of it. And they're going to get a lot better people because these are folks that are in the fire department already that know their way around. The cadet program is, so far as everything I'm seeing, it's fantastic. It's the academic level is at college level for these kids. They're between 18 and 24. They work between 24 and 34 hours, 20 and 34 hours a week. They get paid. They're in uniform and they're like sponges. The young kids are like sponges, but they take everything and they can repeat it back to you. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and Ron, I'll add one. So you mentioned your cadet program, but there's another one that we caught from FDNY, which ties into STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, right? So how do we get kids interested? And you have an amazing partnership with your robotics team, right? Those folks from your robotics team are going into the schools and showing people, the robots, which is the dog that goes inside the buildings, right? You also have the drone team, but that's what gets kids hooked into what's possible in the fire service. So we think about, we call it the fire porn, right? That picture of that 5-alarm fire, but not everybody's interested in that, right? There's people that want to serve in other ways. So that STEM vehicle is getting us there. So, hazmat, EMS, the drone team. So FDNY's drone team, we featured in one of the best practices.
Yeah. And we talked about the cadet program initially, and the mantra was, we're going to have the best probies we ever had. And I said to the committee, I said, yes, but you have a kid comes through fire prevention for 15 weeks and says, maybe I don't have to go in a burning building. I can just do inspections and wear a fancy uniform. Or you have a kid who's really into computers and all that stuff and goes to the dispatch center But we could launch the shuttle from our dispatch centers where I am. And that kid goes in here and says, I can do this for a living? Are you kidding? I said, so let's not discourage them from putting their tentacles out and trying a little bit of everything and see what happens, Pretty interesting stuff. I want to move on to the next question I have for you. We talk a lot about cancer, cardiac, mental stress, mental health. Do you think those are your opinion now? Do you think those are deterrents why people aren't coming? Because when we went public with everything, firefighters have heart attacks, firefighters get cancer, firefighters have mental issues, they have problems, and then we have a suicide rate. Do you think that's hurting us with our recruitment effort?
I would say, fantastic question. I would say yes, if we don't have an answer for it. And here's why. Mom and dad are sitting at home. Their son or daughter says, I want to be in the fire service. All you have to do is Google it. And what comes up? Cancer, PFAS, mental health. So fire departments across the country are leaning into this head on. We have more cancer prevention, cancer awareness, cancer detection programs than ever. Baseline physicals, the same with mental health. The work that the foundation does and the Center for Excellence, right? We have more resources available now if we choose to implement them. So departments that have addressed cancer and mental health as far as having services and address it head on are being more successful in recruiting, because if you're a mom and dad sitting at the coffee table and your child says, I want to be a firefighter, they're going to want to know, to their son or daughter, is this really what you want to do? Look at the rates of cancer, look at the mental health. But if the department has a strategy for that, that addresses that up front. And think about it when, your kids start looking at colleges. Where do you want to go, right? You're doing your assessment on what that department provides. And it's not just the money, right? It's not just the job, but it's all those wraparound services that make people successful. So I would say if departments don't have an answer when somebody says, what's your cancer strategy or your mental health program, they're probably not going to get people. But those that do, that's going to show those applicants and their family members that this department is on top of it and doing what they should be.
Yeah, gotcha. Tom?
Eric, I'm just curious, what's the group working on from a national perspective of the fire service?
Yeah, so nationally, that recruitment campaign that I mentioned is our next task. So the work from IEFF with Department of Labor is continuing. That'll be a state by state effort because you just can't have a one size fits all. National Volunteer Fire Council is continuing their work with the education department. We're still capturing best practices. We were at FDIC, all of us, we did a session there about this. And afterwards, people came up and shared what they're doing that's working. So we're adding that, right? But the one we're focusing on right now is that national campaign. And a number of our partner organizations are actually working on a grant that would create a campaign, because we're not going to create a national campaign out of the goodness of people's hearts. That takes quite a bit of work. If you look at what the military does, and we compare the fire service and law enforcement a lot to our military partners, and to all of our listeners, that have served, thank you for your service to our country. But the military is also struggling to meet their recruiting numbers. So people aren't signing up like they used to, partly because in the past, many of the people that joined the service had a family member in the service. So those numbers are going down. The same is true for us on this call. A lot of us got into the fire service because of a family member or a friend, and that's how we got to the fire station. So how do we create that awareness campaign? So that's the national strategy right now, is to pursue a grant that will allow us to have a national public service type campaign, just like the service does. If you think about the Marine Corps, the few, the proud, right? How do we create something that's flashy, but also gets the attention of people, that lets them know that there are opportunities for you as a career, volunteer, firefighter, EMT, paramedic, open to men and women from diverse backgrounds. So we have a place for everybody. People just don't know how to access us. So that's what we're working on now, is that national campaign and finding a grant that could sustain that.
So I think, Tommy, before you say anything, Tom, let me jump in here, please. With all due respect, I love you, brother. But he brought up that some of us have some family in the fire service. And I think you need to tell Eric where you come from and what's going on in your house right now, from the beginning to now. 30 seconds, pal. Give him the whole thing.
5th generation firefighter, mostly out of New Jersey. Generation number 6, my daughter had just recently been promoted to division chief with the San Juan County, New Mexico Fire Department. And she has requested that I refer to her as chief. And it's been a great ride. But, starting out, I can remember being a spry young lad and taking civil service tests where there were thousands of people lined up to take that. I'm not seeing that anymore. And I'm glad somebody's taken a serious look at the recruiting issue. And I realize there's a generational gap, if you would. Not that it's negative, but the younger folks seem to be motivated by different things. And hopefully we can find that mix in there and keep the numbers up.
Yeah.
I remember
go ahead, Ron.
my first in New York in 77, there were 20,000 guys on the firemen's list. 20,000. It's not that anymore. We don't get that anymore.
No.
We'll get 8, 9, 10,000, but it's a lot of people. But it's half of what it used to be.
Yeah, and one of the things that ties into this, and to build on the discussion, one of the things is recruiting people is part of it, but then how do we treat them when we get them into the academy and into the fire station, right? So we still have some organizations, or granted not many, that still do hazing, and we see that on the news, right, when that comes up. But the other one is, what is the culture of that fire station? And we see bullying, right? So International Fire Chiefs has a webpage dedicated to resources for fire departments to assess the culture of their department when they bring people in. So we spend a lot of time and effort to find people. But if I'm a volunteer or career person and nobody wants to talk to me once I get out of the academy and at the station, that's a problem. I'm going to go somewhere else, right? If I don't look like other people and they treat me differently, I'm going to go somewhere else, right? So getting people is part of it. Getting them trained is the other. But what's the culture then that keeps me at the fire station?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And we're going through some things now in the city, and we actually just developed a leadership development program that talks about all that, because whoever talked about that? Nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
So we're talking about it, and we're about to embark on this program, and we're going to pull supervisors in from all bureaus, uniform and civilian alike, and we got to train 4,000 people, but it's time to have that discussion about not eating our young.
Yes.
Because that's what we did. We ate our young when they came in, right? So I got a question for you, buddy. There are I've seen great volunteer fire departments and great career departments, and I've seen lousy of both. So do you have anything on your radar? Like you've been in touch with this volunteer fire department that like does everything right and they train their asses off or whatever. And same thing with the career departments. Are there any good examples out there you could cite, so to speak?
Yeah, let's split them both. So let's talk about volunteer. National Volunteer Fire Council, International Association of Fire Chiefs have programs that they're taking out on the road that are funded by AFG grants about recruitment or retention. So getting people that are in that volunteer side that are going to be assigned to recruit, or everyone is a recruiter, right? Information on what makes recruiting successful. But if you look at departments that are successful, I'll use Hauppauge, Long Island. They came up to me at FDIC. And the person in the room said, we have a junior firefighter program that produces 6 to 7 new volunteers every year. And these are kids from high school that have a structured program at the fire department. And that's one example. Another one, Hershey, Pennsylvania, has about 10 interns. They're junior firefighters that come in and learn how to be a firefighter. They can do a lot of the firefighter 1 EMT skills, but not all of them. But that gets them in the door and gets them ready. And then when they're of age and they get their certifications, then they start being in riding positions. So we examples like that. Another one is just outside of Philadelphia, and that is with Media, Pennsylvania Volunteer Fire Company. They have a partnership with the local high school because they found that under Pennsylvania law, students are able to be involved in vocational programs as part of the school day. So in the afternoon, these young men and women go down to the fire station and not only take training, but also finish their schoolwork there. And they're learning how to be volunteer firefighters and EMTs. So those are just some examples. Another one I'll throw in there is Spring Lake, New Jersey, right? Monmouth County, right there on the Jersey shore. But what Spring Lake did during the pandemic doesn't cost a lot of money, but just an innovative idea. They identified that all of their company officers at the volunteer department had an office. And when people were working home from the pandemic, what they did is they consolidated the offices and put everything into one office for the officers. And then they made the other ones drop-in officers for people to telework. So if you're an investment banker, if you're an insurance agent, if you're doing something from home, instead of trying to work out of your house, just come to the fire station. There's Wi-Fi. You can log in from an empty office now. It's basically a place for you to work. And when a call drops, that you're ready to go to work. So innovative ideas that people, have come up with that gets people in, and then, gets them not only in, but gets them to bring other people in. So those are just a few, and we've got a lot of others on the list. From the career side, we're seeing a lot of innovation. For example, I mentioned STEM, science, technology, education, math. Baltimore City Fire Department has their engine crews and ladder crews stop at the schools and have lunch with the kids. And what they do is they get to see a firefighter, EMT, paramedic in the school. They have lunch, and they're building that relationship with these young men and women to think about, maybe this is something I want to do when I grow up. You're seeing a lot of different career organizations doing programs, especially for underrepresented communities. And I'll give a plug for Women in Fire. They're doing a lot of camps across the country with local fire departments to get women interested in opportunities in the fire service. So they are basically going hands-on on weekend activities, letting women know that, yes, you can vent a roof, you can wear an air pack, you can run a saw, but getting them that opportunity from other women that have done it to see what's available. So we see that across the country. Some other things with career departments are summer jobs, internships, right? So, coming out of New Jersey, we remember years ago, CETA, right? Comprehensive Education Training Act, that gave people part-time jobs. But we're seeing a lot of departments now with internship positions in the summer. So, do I spend 3 months in the inspections bureau? Do I spend 3 months with administrative work, right? So getting me aware of what opportunities are in the fire service. So again, just a lot of different opportunities the departments are leaning into, both career and volunteer.
You talked about the giving them an opportunity to work at the firehouse. My buddy Bill Dukes, he was the chief of Mount Laurel. He's retired about 10, 12 years already. I don't know if you knew Bill.
Yeah, I saw him this weekend at the Eastern Division meeting.
Okay. So they built the biggest firehouse in the county, which we called the Taj Garage. Okay. And what he did was, because he had a combination fire department, and what he did was to accommodate the volunteers, which at that point, he already had duty crews that would sleep over at night. So he had coverage around the clock. He had his day crews on, the career. At night, he had one career crew on in one of the houses, and he had the volunteers sleeping over on duty crew night. When he built the new house, he built the library and put in, at the time, you had to jack into the wall for the internet. I forgot what the heck they call that. I forgot what it's called already. But you had to plug your computer into the wall to get an internet line, right? And he did that so the volunteers, because they have their regular job during the day, they would come there at night, or he had college kids, they would come there and do that. So they had a quiet library. They were able to get the internet, and they're on duty, and they're there for the night. He was thinking way ahead. And so those little accommodations makes a big difference.
Yeah, and we're seeing those kind of innovations happening really across the country. So, interestingly, a lot of the career departments from the Mid-Atlantic are recruiting in New Jersey, New York, because of the volume of volunteers there. And when those kids go to college, they want them to know that, look, if I'm going to University of Maryland, I could stay at the College Park Fire Station for free. I don't have to worry about room and board, right? My exchange is I get on the rig and make calls. But, our friend, Dr. Steve Kerber, a great example, right? He was a student there as, going to school. Then he stayed through his master's, very active in a fire company. So that's one example. Vigilant Hose has 6 bunks for students from Mount St. Mary's that stay in the station. And we're seeing that design replicate in a lot of places that aren't ready yet for career firefighters, but are, making the coverage with those sleepers, if you will. Some other things. Go ahead.
Yeah, by the way, in case you didn't know, Deputy Chief Joe Jordan, who was at the weekend from FDNY, when he was a student at Maryland, Ron Sonicky was his lieutenant.
Yeah.
in case you didn't know that.
Yeah, and we've seen it, other places where towns now are buying, condominiums or the house next door to the fire station so that they can have resident volunteers, right, to either support the volunteer system or to augment the combination system. But the innovation's out there. People just have to do it.
That's a throwback to the beginning, like when the New York Fire Department stood up in 1865, that the guys lived on the block. The city owned the houses, and the guys lived on the block. They can go home and have meals with their families, but they were on duty 100 hours a week or something like that. But they actually lived in the houses next to the firehouse. So it's a throwback to what we used to do. It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. Tommy, you got something?
Yeah, Eriks, we discussed this kind of broadly, but is there one particular volunteer program out there that is, I hate to use the word better, but maybe more organized than others?
Yeah, I would, Tom, I would hate to use the name of a department because I don't want to slight anybody, but here's what I will say, what makes a volunteer fire department successful with the recruitment effort, which is structure. If we are going to use, and I'll use the term grow your own, if we're going to bring in juveniles, high school teenagers to be in a program, what's the structure, right? What is the training? What's the oversight? What are the hours of when I could be in the fire station? What can I do and not do? Even little things that we take for granted, but how am I identified when I'm at the fire station? So think about how busy a fire scene is. But, a lot of departments with junior programs, explorer programs, designate those by a different color helmet. So everybody on the scene knows that they do not go in the building. They need to stay next to the pump panel. And maybe they can go get a piece of hose or do something, but they're not going into the structure. They're not going into the hot zone. But that structure also has to include compliance with state laws. So some states don't allow youth to operate power equipment. Some states don't allow them to be out past 10 o'clock at night. I think of myself, and I'm dating myself, but when I started to work at Food Town as a porter, I can only work till 10 o'clock at night, and I had to go home, right? That was a child labor law. So even though we have kids that want to be at the fire station and be involved, we have to remember that they're minors, right? So I would say that structure is important. That also ties into the insurance. We need to make sure that when we're going to bring in junior firefighters and programs like that we've talked to our insurance carrier and we let them know that we want to have a junior firefighter program and what it does. And then the last one I'll say is leadership. Having people that understand the value of the junior program, the Explorer Post, but also know what it isn't, and having that right person that is a mentor and not the friend. And what I mean by that is we have seen some tragic stories across the country in both fire and law enforcement junior programs and Explorer programs where those people have been groomed and had inappropriate relationships with their advisors. So we have to make sure that that person is the right person and understands that mission. And it's not unique to fire. Think of how many weeks go by before you read a story about a coach for a team, having an inappropriate relationship with one of their players. The same thing happens in the fire EMS service. Let's make sure it's the right person. Let's make sure we have the structure there. And these young folks want to serve. They want to be part of something. They want to learn, but we need to take the time to teach them and also have that patience because, if they don't get the answer, they're going to go find it on Google and it may not be the right answer. But having that structure is the key for the volunteer fire programs. And those are the kind that we've identified in our best practices. And they are from coast to coast, Tom.
This is not unlike any other youth program. Football coaches, baseball coaches, Boy Scouts, you got to take a test. You got to get vetted. You got to get fingerprinted. This is the same thing. You have an Explorer Post in your fire company. And to me, having an Explorer Post of kids from 14, 15, 16, 17 in a volunteer company, that's an automatic feed into that company.
Yes.
What a great program that is. And I know a couple of guys that took on that Explorer thing in their fire companies, and it's a natural feed. It works great, but it's still a youth program. You're still dealing with kids, and it has to be vetted properly. I agree wholeheartedly with you. So we're starting to kind of wind down on the hour, but I did want to ask you about. I know the FESHI program has been around a long time. I was part of FESHI for a good couple of years. I went to a lot of FESHI meetings in my day. But tell us about the colleges and universities and what role are they playing now with the National Fire Academy, the Summit, overall the fire service, et cetera?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ron. So the U.S. Fire Administration, through the National Fire Academy, we have a partnership with more than 130 colleges and universities across the country that offer fire and emergency services degree programs for individuals. That's not just folks that are looking to get into the fire service. That's also people that are in the fire service looking to get a degree or to finish their degree. So those are great feeder programs for us. So we have a core curriculum at the associate's level that's offered across the country. We have a core curriculum at the bachelor's level. We're working on two new things with our academic partners. One is a master's degree core curriculum, because what we're seeing is a lot of our leaders now are pursuing after their bachelor's that master's degree, and we have people with their PhDs now. Obviously, a lot of your listeners know Dr. Dennis O'Neill. He was one of the first ones in the fire service with a PhD, but we're seeing now with open enrollment, with schools being easier to access than ever before, a lot more people seeing their doctoral degrees. And that's really what the fire service needs. We need the body of work. We need that recognition academically that we are not a vocation, we are a profession, right? And that's what gives us that. And I mentioned we're working on that master's degree curriculum, but we're also going to talk about having a high school curriculum. So those schools that want to have a high school program, let's give them basically a benchmark on what that national curriculum looks like and let them address it. All of the National Fire Academy classes we offer on campus are actually recognized by the American College of Education. So if you come to the NFA in Emmitsburg, and we encourage you to do so, you'll see at the course requirement, it says ACE recommendation, for example, hazmat, maybe 3 degrees in chemistry, upper division. So you could take that admission certificate to your local counselor at your college and say, I've got this NFA class. Will you recognize this class locally toward my degree? And many of them will, not all, but that saves you not only the time, but also the money from taking a 3-credit class in chemistry, because you get credit for your NFA class toward that. So that academic partnership is important because, we need people in the fire service, but like I said, not just firefighters. We need fire protection engineers. We need fire investigators, fire inspectors, community risk reduction. And those college programs open up that horizon to everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's funny we're talking about this now, but this comes full circle. America Burning, in that report, it talked about, obviously, the development of the National Fire Academy and U.S. Fire Administration, but it talked about professionalizing the profession and having something called fire science classes. And that's the first one, I believe, was 1966. And by 1970-71, the colleges started to develop these fire science curriculum. I know a couple of guys that were in the first group of guys that went into John Jay College in New York to take fire science, and I followed them years later. But sure enough, it come full circle. We go back and look at America Burning, and then 25 years later, they did America Still Burning, and reading the second report, it's almost sad because almost nothing changed from the first one, and we still have the fire problem in America. We know we have a fire problem in America, but the thing is, for me, it's like you can't give up. It's like, okay, so we still have the fire problem 50 years later after America Burning. So what do? We just say, to hell with it, let it burn? No, you have to recruit more people, new people, right. And say, hey, listen, there's a mission here. Do what you can to make it a little bit better. And, as time goes on. Yeah, Tom.
I got to give the plug because I'm a product of my environment. I first attended the National Fire Academy in 1982 as a student, and graduated EFO in 93. And then about 96, the gentleman who was the training specialist for the fire investigation curriculum, Jim Covington, gave me a chance to start teaching at the academy. We lovingly refer to the academy as the fire chief factory. The guys that I went through EFO with, everybody became a chief officer if they weren't already. And Eriks, I got to give you kudos. I love what I'm seeing, what you guys are doing these days. And I encourage everybody to apply and attend the academy. It's a phenomenal experience. there's a number of us who did all 4 years of our EFO together that we talk at least once a month. And I don't like to think back to how long ago that was, but it's just such a phenomenal experience and really assisted in my career the whole time I was working. And for that, sir, thank you.
Well, no, thank you. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in with Tommy also. I didn't get quite the early start he got, but I started going in the 90s, and then I taught for 11 or 12 years, and always look forward to that week to go down and teach and to meet the guys from all over the country and all that stuff. But I think the real benefit to the whole thing was the people that you met and the networking. And then you go home and you got this problem and you put out an email and you get 50 answers in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, did you try this? Did you try that? How about this? How about that? And so that networking opportunity, it just phenomenal. Of course, then you have all the rest of the phenomenal, the campus itself, the library, the biggest fire protection library in the country, and I know all that other stuff. But all good experiences. As you know, Eriks, I was the administrator for the Alumni Association for 20 years, and now I ran into Doug Klein, by the way, Tommy. Did you see Doug at FDIC?
For about 3 seconds.
Yeah, I ran into Doug, and he did CPR on the organization. They're back.
Yeah.
They are back. They got a new website. They got new resources. They're doing a lot of stuff. So if in fact, folks that are listening, if you've been to the NFA and you're not a member of the Alumni Association, join. I think it's $10 a year. It's the best bargain in Emmitsburg. Okay, you're going to spend more than that on your first 2 beers at the Art House. So $10, and it'll keep you in touch with the campus, with the goings on, with the superintendent who's with us tonight. Great idea. So yeah, Doug Klein's doing a great job with that, and I'm glad to see it coming all the way back. So Eriks, what we'll do is before Tommy reads the roll call, he usually reads a roll call at the end of the show of our line of duties that we've had since we were on last. We'd like for you to give you the opportunity to kind of summarize about the NFA, the USFA, whatever you want to talk about, to kind of wrap it all up and tell the folks out there in Fireland what they need to know about the operation or what you'd like them to know.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for your kind comments. And it's an honor to serve as a superintendent. I like to tell people it's your National Fire Academy, right, in caps, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve. And I have a great team of people that I work with who are passionate about the students, passionate about the experience. So we're reaching about 90,000 students a year. And that's on campus, off campus, through our straight training partners, also virtually. So we know we try to get the National Fire Academy courses as close as we can to home, because not everybody could travel. So just go on our webpage, just Google National Fire Academy admissions online. All those things will drop down. We love to have you. I'll make a plug. Women's Weekend is going to be coming up in June. It's the second time we're hosting that. Last year, we had more than 250 attendees from across the country. We're hoping to break that mark this year. That's a partnership we have with Women in Fire, and everybody's able to attend. Just Google Women's Weekend National Fire Academy, and you're able to come. There's no cost for the training. You just buy a meal ticket. But I think this discussion about the National Fire Academy really ties in to the recruitment and retention challenge, and that is that while the three of us know about the National Fire Academy, we still have members of the American Fire Service that don't know that we have a National Fire Academy. They don't know how to access it. So that's one of the things that I'm really spending a lot of time on, is letting people know what we do and how we can support, how we can help. And that includes things, Ron, like the library, right? The largest fire and EMS library in the United States, if not the world, with over 100,000 publications, of which 90% are digitized now during the pandemic. So all you have to do is go online, and you could access that 24/7 and you can get those papers. But it's the same challenge I think we see at the local fire service level, which is oftentimes our fire station doors are closed. People only see us when there's a call or when we're getting groceries or when we're going to get fuel. So we need to tell the story about what the fire service does. We need to share the brand with our communities, because people don't know what a set of turnout gear costs. People don't know what a fire engine costs. People don't know how many runs we have a year, and people don't know how they can help us, right? So we're seeing things like citizens academies, open houses coming back because we forgot about those, right? So we have to get that community engaged, and that's how we harvest members also. So I'll use a volunteer department I was in. We hosted a pancake breakfast each year at Father's Day, but we lost money on it. But the good thing is we normally picked up 4 new members from that Father's Day breakfast because people didn't realize that they can belong, right? So it's the same challenge I have as a superintendent, letting people what we know we do, but we have to do the same thing as the fire service, tell people what we do and how they can help and that we're looking for members. So I'll close with that. And it's just great to see both of you. And Tom, I'm glad you didn't mention Mike West. So I know you and Mike go way back, Ronnie, Mike, but Mike and I dispatched together a fire rescue at Monmouth County for many years. And just great to be with all of you tonight.
That's when you were dispatching through 2 cups and a string, right? You would send, right? 2 cups and a string.
Right.
Ringing the gong in the center of the square.
Yeah.
You're ringing the gong in the center of the square.
Yeah.
Just before we go, I when I went back to the FDNY 3 years ago, I asked about NFA, and we had one guy that was going on his own time, his own dime, and I seek to change that, and I did, and I'm not taking credit, but it was important enough. I went charged up the hill. I said, we got to send our people to the NFA. There's a full fire prevention curriculum, and we've sent 4 or 5 already in the last 18 months. And when they come back, I don't have to tell you, they're gushing about it, and they're encouraging other guys, sign up. So we've now taken 95% of our bureau are uniformed civilians who've never been there, and now they're going there as well. So it's a good thing, and we need to perpetuate that. So with that, I'm going to ask. Before we say goodnight, Tom, if you would read the roll since we were on the air last.
With the last show, our regular show, was back on February 26th. And since then, Zeb Smith from Fritch, Texas, made the supreme sacrifice on March 5th. He was killed doing a search and rescue operation at a residential fire. Roy Witt from Olive Hill, Kentucky, on March 12th, passed away from injuries sustained in a vehicle collision. Craig Conkle from South Banbrook, New Jersey, on March 23rd, suffered a heart attack after a call. Ronnie Metcalf from Lexington, North Carolina, on March 29th, suffered a heart attack that was perpetuated by an evacuation of a burning structure, became disoriented and went missing. James Ward Jr. from Charlottesville, Virginia, on March 30th, passed away from an unknown medical condition at a wildland fire. Michael Vinson from Clinton, South Carolina, on March 31st, passed away from injuries sustained in a vehicle collision. John Bonzardia from, I'm going to hack this one up, Rostavier Township, Pennsylvania, on April 7th. He suffered a heart attack after a call. Richard Gibbon from Ekron, Kentucky, on April 8th, had a heart attack at the station. Heath O'Shea from Jacksonville, Florida, on April 13th, suffered a medical emergency at the station. John Raisler from Miles City, Montana, on April 16th, suffered a heart attack after performing a wildland pack test. Leland Alexander from Mildredgeville, Tennessee, on April 27th, a vehicle collision. And Derek Nestor from Wyomingson, Pennsylvania, on May 6th, had a heart attack at home after a shift. As always, we ask that we keep the fallen and their families in your thoughts and prayers, and heed the lessons learned so we can prevent more line of duty deaths.
Thanks, Tom. And before we sign off, we also want to send good wishes to our brothers in law enforcement. This is Law Enforcement Memorial Week. They're in D.C. this week honoring their war dead. I believe they had, I heard the number this morning, I think it was 185 line of duties last year in the police service, something to that effect. So we want to just send a note out to them that we're thinking about them as well this week. With that, we want to thank our special guest star today, Eriks Gibliks, Superintendent, National Fire Academy. Eriks, great to have you on. Yes, golf clap. Why don't we give him a little golf clap there? And I'm sure we'll have you on again down the road so you give us an update of what's going on at the USFA and the Fire Academy. With that, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, wear your seatbelt, wear your mask, prepare for everything, expect the unexpected. Okay, stop for red, use your head. Don't get dead. When you hug your family, kiss them, hug them tight before you say goodnight. So with that, we'll say goodnight, Tommy. I'll see you soon, brother. Eriks, thanks again for having us, for having been with us. That was hard to say.
It's okay. Glad to be with you. Yeah.
We'll turn it over to our producer, Mark. Mark, take us out, buddy.
Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tenkatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by enforced technology. Only from Tenkata Protective Fabrics.